It's time. Assaulting the narrative. Destroying the lie.
John Gordon.
Unearthing the truth.
You can't handle the truth. The truth.
Live from West Palm Beach, Florida. Heard coast to coast and all around the world.
John Gordon.
High Noon with John Gordon.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of The Truth. I am John Gordon. We're going to tell you the truth today. And I have been really worried about what the evil Democrats are going to do to take away our democracy in 2024, as I believe they did in 2020. And right now, my friend Jeffrey Clark is before the D.C. Disciplinary Board from the D.C. Bar, and they are accusing him of election interference and false swearing in relation to 2020. And now he has filed a 30-page brief saying that, no, wait a second, that there are several things wrong with this complaint. You may have heard Jeffrey Clark on The Truth just last weekend, and it's not a 30-page brief, it's a 16-page brief. I misspoke. So I always want to be sure to tell you the truth as I know it, as well as I know it. So anyway, he said, no, you know, you've got this wrong. Not only do you not, is the substance of your complaint wrong, but you don't have jurisdiction. You cannot exert jurisdiction over me, and I want the complaint dismissed. And we'll see how they rule. I don't think that they're going to change direction, because it's not about truth. It's not about ethics. It's not about the law. It's about them having stolen an election in 2020, and now they're using the best defense, which is to go after all the people who tried to right that wrong. And so the question that I continue to ask myself is, what are the Democrats going to do to interfere with the 2024 election? I would really like to know, what do you think they're going to do? Call me right now at 804-778-8888. Michael's standing by in the studio. We'll put you right on the air. I would like to know, what theory do you have of how they are going to interfere with the election? But I am in the process of developing a theory that I first read about from an article in The Hill. And you have to sit very patiently and watch very carefully. And I think that what they're doing is right in front of us. I think it's as bold as the nose on your face. Look at what's happened just in the last few months. The Republican majority in the House of Representatives continues to get whittled away and whittled down. I want to welcome our sponsor to the show, First Liberty of Georgia. I'm going to tell you about First Liberty of Georgia in just a few minutes, but we're happy to have them as a sponsor of The Truth. So what do you suppose the Democrats are up to? What do you think they're going to do? Well, I'm watching, and I'm watching, and I'm watching. And I'm watching as our Republican thin majority gets slivered down one by one. Brian Higgins, he is actually a Democrat from New York. He resigned in February of 24. But Representative Bill Johnson, a Republican from Ohio, resigned effective January the 21st. As you know, Kevin McCarthy, after having lost his speakership, resigned. Now, I that struck me as odd. I mean, is he just like mad and taking his marbles and going home? Nancy Pelosi lost her speakership twice, and she didn't leave. We wish that she had, but she didn't. But Kevin McCarthy, he could have stayed. We need him. But he resigned effective December the 31st, 2023. And Representative Ken Buck, Republican from Colorado, he resigned as of effective March the 22nd. Now you've got Mike Gallagher, a Republican from Wisconsin. He's indicated he's going to resign on April the 19th, further reducing our Republican majority from 218 to 216. It's very scary to me. I don't have evidence. I lack evidence of what is motivating this. Where is this coming from? One Democrat has resigned, and now 5 Republicans, and then the congressman, what was his name from New York? Stambos, you know who I'm talking about. He has resigned. Our majority is systematically apparently to me, it appears to me, and the Hill hypothesizes that our very thin majority continues to get whittled down one at a time. Okay, we still have a majority. Yeah, we still have a bunch of frickin' rhinos that don't. The Democrats, they never vary from what the leadership tells them to do. They lie together, they vote together. And we don't. We're infested by rhinos and just weak-kneed people who lack courage. So what's the big deal? All right, we still have a majority. We can cling to this majority surely until the end of the year, or can we? What happens if we lose our majority? I'm not so concerned about legislative issues as I am what I see as a looming threat as put forth by the Hill. What am I talking about? I'll tell you. Robert Kennedy Jr. is making moves. He is gaining popularity by the day as an independent candidate. I believe, and I started out not knowing, and I was intellectually curious, who would be the benefactor of a Robert Kennedy independent party run. Well, I think really, as I've thought about it and read about it and looked at it, I think that it might benefit Donald Trump. What Republican, well, I should say it a different way. Who was most likely to vote for a Kennedy? I mean, just think about it. If it's up for grabs and you're wondering who to vote for and one of the individuals is named Kennedy and you're a Democrat and you don't like Joe Biden, you're not going to vote for Donald Trump. But Robert Kennedy is an appealing person if you're a liberal Democrat, especially if you are an environmentalist, a climate person. I'm going to get back to that in a second, too. Robert Kennedy is your guy. So he's going to take votes more likely from Joe Biden than from Donald Trump. Okay. Great. That's good news, isn't it? Well, it is, unless he gets enough votes that no one gets to 270 electoral votes. And I think that that is a growing possibility by the day. So what happens if no one gets to 270? The election goes to the United States House of Representatives. And as we lose our Republican majority one at a time, we're coming up on April. We've gotten till December. And is it possible that Robert Kennedy takes enough votes away from Joe Biden and enough votes away from Donald Trump that there is no candidate with 270 electoral votes that goes to the U.S. House? We've lost our majority, and guess who they are going to elect? It won't be Donald Trump. It won't be Robert Kennedy. It will be Obama's fourth term under the guise of Joe Biden. I don't think we can stand another 4 years. I honestly and truthfully, in my heart of hearts, do not believe that we can endure another 4 years. What do you think? 804-778-8888. I really would like to hear from you today, and I'd like to know, what do you think the Democrats have up their sleeve? You know they're going to do something. They cannot join us. They cannot beat us in a competition for ideas. The only way they're going to beat us is if they can cheat, if they can do something demonic, if they can do something evil, as they have proven over and over and over again that they are capable and willing to do. So I don't believe January 6th. I think that is a bunch of hogwash. I think it was an invention from the Democrats. They knew there was going to be trouble in Washington. They knew that they had stolen the election. They knew the country was upset about it. And so people like Jeff Clark tried to do something about it. And so we're going to punish the victims. We're going to go after the messenger. We're going to create the illusion that they are the ones who are trying to interfere with an election when it's nothing but a big freaking lie. It's not the big lie. It's the biggest lie. And they're the ones that are telling it. And I'm sick to my stomach with it. We've got 19 people in Georgia who are being persecuted by Fani Willis, and she's claiming that they tried to steal an election, when I know in my heart of hearts and in my brain with the evidence that I've watched. You can watch it too. Just go on YouTube and watch the State Farm tabulating center where people are sitting there putting the same batch of 100 ballots back through the tabulator, in one instance 32 times. We've watched the video 100 times. We've counted how many times they put the same ballots back into the tabulators, and it's hundreds in an election that was ostensibly lost by 11,780. It's a lie. There are 3,200 duplicate ballots on the Secretary of State's own website. But we're going to prosecute these people who dared stand up for democracy and what was right, and we're going to accuse them of election interfering. And look at the people that are doing this. Look at the people who are doing it. Letitia James said she was running to get Donald Trump. And by God, she's doing a pretty good job of it for now, except the courts do seem to be coming to his defense a little bit. They reduced the bond from $450 million to $150 million. Oh, what a victory. Not really. $150 million, I'm sorry, that's real money. And you know they're draining his campaign coffers because the money is going to pay for his legal defense rather than for television and social media and digital advertising. It's a travesty. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a travesty. And you better stand up and try and fight back, or else we're doomed. This is the election that people have been saying was for the heart and soul of America. I think this year truly is that election. But look at how these Democrats operate. Russia, Russia, Russia. Do you know Tulsi Gabbard? She was a congressman elected from Hawaii as a Democrat. Man, did her ship sail. I mean, she hadn't gotten elected to Congress, and she was being invited to the Correspondents' Dinner and promoted to vice chairman of the Democratic National Committee. I mean, her star rose faster than anybody in politics that I can remember. And she is one smart, patriotic American who to this day serves our military. She wears the uniform. And she was a Dem who stood up to permanent Washington, to the Washington establishment. And what did they do? They punished her. I don't mean they punished her. They went after her with everything they got. And here is a lady who wears the uniform, who has served in our military. Well, let's watch a couple of clips here. I'll let her tell the story. This is courtesy of Tucker Carlson.
Also learned that there is an actual list of people who are, blacklisted, I suppose. And I was told that it would take years and years and years to ever work my way off that list.
So what does it mean to be on the list? What does that mean? Well, she felt so passionately about her beliefs that she committed the ultimate sin. She ran against Hillary Clinton for president in 2016. And as everybody knows, you don't mess with the Clintons.
I had the audacity to go against them, to challenge the elite of the Democratic Party, which is Hillary Clinton and it's Barack Obama and it's the people who surround them in the military-industrial complex, in the media-industrial complex, those who are pushing, and it's not limited to the Democratic Party, of course.
Oh.
Mitt Romney also called me a treasonous person who is a Russian asset or something along those lines. So, they are all part of this permanent Washington elite who cannot allow for those who challenge them to go unscathed.
Wow. So what did she do? She said, fine. If you're going to ostracize me, if you're going to blacklist me, I'm going to leave the Democratic Party. And she is now a champion of the right, and she has become a Republican and was one of the best received speakers at the CPAC conference that was just held a month or so ago. Now, the question I have is, who is Donald Trump going to choose as his vice president? Most people say, oh, it doesn't make any difference. The vice president candidate doesn't make any difference. Well, I beg to differ. I think, first of all, I've said here on the program, I like Ted Cruz. I didn't used to like Ted Cruz, but now I like Ted Cruz. I've warmed up to him. The more I've gotten to know him, the more I like him. He is a conservative. He's a Christian. He's a fearless warrior. He fights. He tells the truth. And we need Texas. So I think, subject to changing my mind, that for now, I think Ted Cruz is a great choice. Why? Because if, God forbid, something were to happen to President Trump after he is elected, we need somebody that is capable of running this country. Do you know most people think Kamala Harris was just an insurance card for Joe Biden? They'll never get rid of Joe Biden if Kamala is there in the wings, unless they figure out how to do a Spiro Agnew 1-2 punch. Take her out and then take out Joe Biden. I'm talking politically, of course. But that's the way the Dems operate. That's not the way Republicans operate. I really don't believe that's how Republicans operate. I really don't believe that Republicans lie. I really don't believe that they put their political interest ahead of the country's interest. There are some that do. Mitt Romney comes to mind. Mitch McConnell comes to mind. They're out there for sure. Those are the people that we affectionately refer to as rhinos. And we're losing rhinos one by one. We are ridding the party of rhinos one by one. We got rid of Paul Ryan. We got rid of the former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. We've gotten rid of Ronna McDaniel. I cheered for those things. McConnell has announced that he will not be the minority leader or the majority leader come January when the new Congress takes their seats. I think that's great cause for celebration. And there's a good chance, I think, that we can reclaim the Senate. I think there's an equally good chance that we will lose the House, and I'm worried that we will lose the House before the election or before this session of Congress is over, and that we will lose our majority, and that there is a chance that no candidate will get 270 votes, and that the election will fall to the House of Representatives, and it will be controlled by the Democrats, and they will vote for Joe Biden, and we'll have another 4 years of Obama. I don't think we can stand it. And I don't appreciate these Democrats who say, well, if Trump is elected, I'm going to leave the country. Well, I cheer for them to leave. But I swear to goodness, I don't know if I can continue to live here under Joe O. Biden. I mean, this country is in such a mess. I've never seen it more divided. We've got a war in the Middle East. We've got a war in the Ukraine and China moving against Taiwan, which is my second biggest fear. There is a piece of me, and y'all, you know, I don't take any joy in bringing you doom and gloom. That's not who I am. I'm a salesman. My high school headmaster said, I don't worry about you, Gordon. You could sell refrigerators to Eskimos. I took that as an esteemed compliment. But I am an optimist. I really, at 71 years old, I've had a great life. I have a good life. I love our country. I love my family. I love my friends. Things are good, except our national government. And we've got to figure out to get back to the basics in this country and get back to a country that is founded on Christian values and right and wrong and truthfulness. And there's zero chance that we're going to find that with the Democrats, with Joe O. Biden as the head of the party, and the Clintons and the Obamas pulling the strings. You know it. I know it. We all know it. But these Republicans that are falling by the wayside one by one, I got to believe, I'm telling you, my suspicion without proof is it's deep state operatives that are causing it to happen. Why are these people leaving? Why are they abandoning the job that they worked so hard to achieve and to attain? And why are they weakening our majority? It feels like permanent deep state Washington at work to me. Let's keep watching it. And let me just finish this segment by saying I'm not fear-mongering. That is not my intent. But what I am trying to do is shed light on what could happen so that you will stand up and say it's not going to happen. We refuse to allow it to happen on our watch. Put light on it so that if other Republicans start to resign, you can come back here and we can say, okay, we predicted that it could happen. We didn't want it to happen, but it looks like it is happening. We've got to tell the world, so maybe it will not succeed. But with all the things that are going wrong in the world today, I fear for a national security crisis. And I don't know, but I've just got a suspicion if we get sucked into a greater role in the Ukraine, if the Middle East flares back up and we get sucked into that further, and then China moves on Taiwan, we could find ourselves in a world war. And I can see the Dems suspending the election in the name of national security. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I ascribe less than a 1% chance that it could happen, but it could happen. The fact of the matter is, I don't know. There could be another pandemic. I don't know. We keep reading about it. We keep reading about the next. I mean, the media, they don't report that there is that the coronavirus has been stopped in its tracks. They're not saying that. What they're writing about is the next pandemic. Who knows? How would they know? Maybe John from Henrico, Virginia knows. I'm sorry, Jeff from Henrico. Jeff, welcome to The Truth.
How you doing?
Great, thank you. Hope you're having a great Easter holiday weekend. And by the way, happy Easter to everyone.
Thank you. I hear that, and I say the same back to everyone, too. Happy Easter. And a couple things I want to go ahead and pass on to you. Let me go ahead and make sure I'm not on feedback here with this truck thing.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Can you hear me good?
Yeah, where are you calling from exactly?
From Henrico, Virginia. It's a little west of Richmond.
Yeah, I even almost pronounced it right. Henrico.
Oh, okay.
I think I said Henrico, but what do I know? a southern redneck from Macon, Georgia. All right, Henrico, Virginia, welcome.
Hey, listen, first of all, don't you dare quit on this Republican Party or this country. Think about what our grandparents went through, 12 years in that Depression, and still, look how good we came through that. So we just got a heck of a fight ahead of us, number one. Number two, don't forget about all this thing that happened in 2020 with the BLM and such and the marches. That was only about 18% of the population. So if we get another Democratic term, trust me, we're going to have way more than that 16 to 18% that showed up there for that BLM. We're going to have that probably going across the whole country, especially in Washington.
Are you making the argument that blacks are going to vote for Trump? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely so.
I believe that.
We are not just going to have these little marches all throughout the city. You imagine the march that's going to be on Washington, D.C.? It's going to be huge. You can't keep doing that with the prices, and you can't keep taking people away, because I've had a lot of black people tell me about this ain't fair to me. I worked my whole life to get this, and these people come across the border, they get all this stuff free. I pay $1,200 for this phone and that, and they get all this stuff free. It ain't fair. Oh, I've heard from a lot of people that know that this is definitely wrong what's happening in this country right now. So I definitely think the actual black vote is definitely going to come out more for Trump than Biden. It's just hitting them right in the face. It's too obvious.
Well, I have a 501c4 that we have formed, and we're going to try and impact 2024 by going after blacks, Hispanics, Asians, housewives, millennials, Jews, and make the case why they should be voting Republican. But they've been conditioned over the last 50 or 60 years that they are supposed to vote Democrat, when the Republican Party is the party of Lincoln. The Republican Party is the party that freed the slaves. And Donald Trump did more for criminal justice reform in the 4 years that he was president than Obama did in the 8 years that he was president. And that is a African-American issue. And we also had the highest black employment. And Hispanics actually, in a counterintuitive way, actually want a secure border. Why do they want a secure border? Because they don't want people coming in, disrupting their families, and taking their jobs. And so this open border is a crisis of great proportion, and it affects everyone, and nobody likes it. And I think everybody sees it for what it's worth.
With you about the immigrants coming across. Eventually, they're going to see that, hey, listen, this is just like Mexico. If we're going to keep letting it get out of control, we can't keep doing that.
Or we're going to devolve into a third world country if we're not careful. Yeah, I mean, my mom used to say, you better watch out who your friends are. If you lie down with dogs, you're going to get up with fleas. And we're inviting the dogs here. We're inviting the dogs. They're not sending their brightest and best. And the president of Mexico said he's just going to stop it. He likes it. He's getting rid of their problems and sending them to the United States. Jeff, thank you for calling. And again, have a happy Easter. We've got John on the line from Pennsylvania. Welcome to The Truth. And we got Brad Carver, my friend, who is one of the most hardworking, loyal Republicans I've ever known, who is the 6th District Chairman in Fulton County, Georgia. He's standing by in the green room. We're going to get to him right after we hear from John, calling us from Pennsylvania.
Hi, John. Thanks for taking my call.
Welcome to The Truth.
I just want to say two things. The election, if it goes to the House, is not decided by a majority. It's decided by the states. They each get one vote, and how that's decided is whoever holds the majority of their party in that state of the amount of representatives gets to vote their candidate. So let's say Pennsylvania has 17 representatives. If we have 9 Republicans, then we get to vote for the Republicans. So that's the way that would work, not by a majority.
That you are correct,
and
sir.
The last time I checked, I think the Republicans had the majority of states in the House of Representatives. The second thing is you said about election interference, and I don't know if this is so much election interference, but every one of these illegals, a majority of them are getting registered to vote. They may not vote, but the Democrats will have their names on the rolls where they can use those names to mail in fraudulent mail-in ballots.
No question.
And I don't know why President Trump and the Republican National Committee is not hiring Jay Valentine with Omega for America. And why isn't he hired? This guy has the only product to combat this type of fraud. I don't know why they're not hiring him.
I don't know. I have had enough conversations with the Trump world to know that they're taking it very seriously. They do have an apparatus that they have and are putting together to ward off another steal. And things have changed. Things have changed a lot. And they have changed in the state of Georgia, which I do believe was stolen in 2020.
Yeah.
It's not really a belief. It's a fact in my mind because I have actually seen the evidence. John, you make great points. Thank you for calling. And that clock is ticking. I got to go here and welcome my next guest in just a second. Before we do that, I do want to welcome to the show First Liberty of Georgia, a sponsor of ours. And like those of you who are in business, and when you make a business decision that requires a high level of trust and a high level of confidence, I don't know about you, but I'm really careful who I deal with under those circumstances. I want you to know that I have had a personal friendship with the people at First Liberty, Georgia, since my friend Brant Frost and I went to the same high school together and graduated in 1972. I think he might be a year or two younger than me, but that's over 50 years, folks. And I know his entire family, including Brant the father and Brant the son. And I know that a lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs, and many of us are on the MAGA side and own businesses. We run businesses, small, medium, and large. And have you been to the bank lately and trying to get a loan? Well, if you own or manage a business and you want to expand, maybe you want to expand your inventory. Maybe you want to build a new building, or maybe you want to refurbish an existing one. Maybe you want to expand into a new territory or expand into another state. If you need between $250,000 and $10 million, let me tell you what to do. Run, don't walk. Go FirstLibertyGeorgia.com. That's FirstLibertyGA.com. FirstLibertyGA.com. They are my friends, Brant Jr. or Brant Sr. in Noonan, Georgia, and they operate in all 50 states, and they are backed by the Small Business Administration. Guess what? They've been in business since 1990. They're MAGA, they're Trump, they're the real deal. And in just 10 minutes, you can get pre-qualified over the phone. Don't let banks stand in your way of getting to your dream. If you want to grow your business, now is the time. FirstLibertyGA.Georgia.com. That's who you can go to get financing. Go to FirstLibertyGA.com. Check these guys out in just 10 minutes. They'll tell you whether you're qualified for $250 up to $10 million. They're there for you, and you're not going to get a ream of paper like you would if you go to your bank. Forget that. They are Christians. They are strong conservatives. They are strong MAGA Republicans. And I personally like to support patriots. So welcome to the show as our sponsor, First Liberty GA. Brad Carver, he is a special interest person. Translation, he lobbies the Georgia legislature, okay? And he works for a very prominent Atlanta law firm and is with us today on The Truth. Brad, happy Easter and welcome to The Truth.
Happy Easter. Great to see you, John.
Thank you so much.
You're a patriot yourself.
Well, thank you. You know, I do care about the country, and I mean that sincerely. It has been so good to me. I've got 2 of our 3 sons here. I've got my new grandbaby here from Los Angeles this weekend. And none of the things that I've done would be possible if I didn't live in a free country and in a capitalist society where you can work hard and get rewarded for it. And that's what I care about. But today, I care about honest, free elections. And you've been down at the Georgia legislature this session. Is it over now? Do we have sine die? Are we done?
It is, yes. It's over. And
last night, right?
It was over, yes. It finished early into the morning on Friday. So
gotcha.
we are now done with our 40-day session. And I've been in a suit all week, so my Duke Blue Devils are hopefully going to make the Final Four tomorrow. We play NC State, so I'm sporting my shirt today. I'm being a little casual, but I'm here in my law office. And I just wanted to follow up based on the last comment you said. I also agree. I do not think we had a fair and accurate election in 2020. And ground zero for that here in Georgia was Fulton County, which is where I live and work.
And where I live and my businesses operate.
Fulton County, truly, for those your listeners, it's 1.1 million people. It is more than 10% of the state of Georgia lives in Fulton County, and it is a heavily Democratic county. Though I will say that it wasn't that long ago that we did win some countywide Republican elections. But I credit the ballot harvesting operation of the left, and it certainly has made impacts. It does swing very close elections, and it obviously swung the 2020 election, in my opinion. And that's based, like you said, on looking at this. I was at State Farm Arena. I'm familiar with all the players, and I'm pretty familiar with what happened with 2020, and which is why Chairman David Schaefer appointed me to be the Election Confidence Task Force chairman for the Georgia Republican Party. And that I did that, and I'm still continuing in that role to today, now under the leadership of Chairman Josh McCoon. And we did a lot with Senate Bill 202. So that's the first thing I want to tell your listeners. I think that Senate Bill 202 improved our elections considerably. And if there's any evidence of that, it would be the fact that there have been 15 federal lawsuits filed against us because the Democrats don't like it when we try to make fair and accurate elections. But what we have learned over the last 3 years is there was work left to be done. Senate Bill 202 was very good, but it still had left some issues out there. And so we have been working hard during the last last 3 legislative sessions to make improvements. The last 2 sessions before this one, we haven't been able to get much done. We've had a lot of good legislation, but ultimately those did not get passed, other than trying to correct the Zuckerbucks issue, which is many of your listeners know that 94% of those Zuckerbucks have gone to Democratic counties and in an attempt to swing elections. And we wanted that money proportionally distributed to all Georgia counties per capita. And unfortunately, we've seen the left try to circumvent those rules. So last year, we went back in and tightened that law up. But this year, we made significant progress. I will say there's some big ticket items we're still interested in doing. We allow no excuse absentee ballots in Georgia. I think that's a mistake. I will point your listeners to the 2005 Carter Baker Commission that said that absentee ballots are the least secure method of voting, that they encourage vote buying schemes, voter intimidation, and vote harvesting, and it should be used as a method of last resort. We all know the cases where absentee ballots should be used. We have been trying to get the state of Georgia to follow the state of New York, and those are examples, or those are instances that all of you are familiar with. That would be like you're in the hospital, you're deployed in the military, you're out of the state on work business and can't be able to vote in person, you're over the age of 70. Those are all legitimate reasons to use absentee ballots, but everyone else should be going and voting in person. It is much more secure when we are able to check people's IDs at the door and to be able to control the voting process. Because if you think about it, when we send absentee ballots out, they go all over the world, and there's no one there to monitor the actual filling out of those ballots. And because we have drop boxes, it also creates another level of insecurity. So we would still like to see those drop boxes eliminated, elimination of no excuse absentee ballots. And then the final big ticket one is to go back to opt-in motor voter. What does that mean? It means that in Georgia, unfortunately, we're opt-out. Whenever you go and get a new driver's license or get it renewed, you're automatically registered to vote in Georgia. In other states, in a majority of states, that is not the case. You actually have to want to be registered to vote. And that's what I wish we would do with the state of Georgia. So we'll continue to push on those items in the coming years, the next year's legislative session. But this year, I am very proud to say that we had a number of objectives and bills running through the General Assembly. And on the last day of the session, we got all of those across the finish line. And I'm really happy with how strong our House and Senate leaders, the executive branch, stood, and the fact that every single Republican in the General Assembly supported this legislation. So I'll stop there for a second, but I want to tell everybody that I think I'm very optimistic going into this election, that we have significantly improved our election system.
Well, that is great news, Brad. And ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to one smart guy here. He is a partner at Hall Booth Smith and the senior managing director of the law firm's governmental affairs division. He is a Duke undergrad, and he has a JD MBA from the University of Georgia. He spent 28 years as an Army officer. So it is an honor, Brad, to have you on the show. So Senate Bill 202, right in the aftermath of 2020, imposed voter ID cards, correct? And it got rid of all the drop boxes that were outside the polling place. And it did, as I recall, to some extent, curtail absentee ballots. I don't recall the specifics on that, but when we enacted the law that said, okay, you got to show your ID to vote, the Dems just went apoplectic, and it cost us the Major League Baseball All-Star game, which they then moved to Denver, which has more restrictive voting laws than Georgia does. These fake narratives and the lies and the deception get under my skin. What in the world is going on? And to me, how can you say that showing an ID is voter suppression? I think it's election integrity fostering, and to call it suppression is just not real, is it?
No, it's not. Listen, one thing I know about the Democrats, they have two major plays in their playbook. One is they use identity politics. In other words, they say if you are a certain race or you're a certain gender or orientation or a certain religion, you have to vote Democrat. And to me, that's insulting. That's saying, you can't think for yourself. If you're this, then we're just going to harvest your votes. Republicans don't think like that. We welcome anybody to our party who believe in our ideas and our policies, and I'm very proud of that. And I also heard you taking questions before I got on here. I do see a significant movement in non-traditional voters to the Republican Party. So one thing that the Democrats are terrified of is that will continue, because they have played this identity politics game for so long. The second thing that the Democrats always do is they accuse us of trying to, Jim Crow 2.0, to change our election laws to target certain groups. And what they have not been able to show is any evidence of that, because it's simply not true. And in fact, when they make arguments like if you're black or you're Hispanic, that you can't show an ID or you can't find the correct precinct or you can't go to the DMV, those to me are soft racist arguments. I think they're insulting arguments. And to compare the state of Georgia and what we did with Senate Bill 202 to what the Democrats did during segregation, is to me it is unbelievable insulting behavior to their voters, and Republicans don't think like that.
I totally agree with you.
Everybody equal.
And when they don't have anything else to do, they just start making stuff up and lying and being loose with the truth. But help me understand, what is the argument for retaining drop boxes? As I understand it, They're only open during the hours that the polls are open. And when you go to the voting place, you can turn left and go to a machine like everybody else, or you can turn right and go to a drop box. Why do we need drop boxes? Are they not? Here's my real question. Aren't drop boxes just an instrumentality for fraud?
I think they are, okay, because we have wire fraud, mail fraud laws in our country. So if you use the U.S. postal system by mailing an absentee ballot and you're committing election fraud, that's a felony. Well, it's a felony to fraudulently vote in an election, but it's also a felony to do that through the U.S. Postal Service. So one argument is if you have a drop box, you don't have to mail in a ballot, so you're not using the Postal Service, that takes away one of the legal impediments to election fraud. But the other thing these things, I worry about them not being monitored or being monitored by inside players, meaning people that have an agenda, that work in certain election offices across the state. That's what always concerns me. And I've always said, you have the ability to mail in ballots. And here's an interesting thing. Do you realize that if you mail in an absentee ballot and you don't put a stamp on it, the Postal Service will deliver, and they identify it as a ballot, obviously, because it's in a ballot envelope. Those will be delivered without postage. So I just think everybody's got a drop box at the end of their street. If you live in a condo or an apartment building, there's a mailbox that's there for all the residents. You can do that. I don't understand why there's the necessity for drop boxes. And of course, they came around because of COVID. And if I don't know if y'all realize this, but we're now at the 4-year mark from when the CDC determined and made the recommendation to the country that everybody vote by absentee ballot. And they did that in the guise of COVID, which is just really interesting to me.
I'll say it's beyond interesting. I think it was orchestrated. I think it was an intentional act. I think it was planned. I think that they executed it incredibly well. And just like when the CIA killed Kennedy, they came out with the Warren Commission, which was a fabrication. It was a complete lie. There was very little truth in the Warren Commission report. So this go round, I call 2020 JFK 2.0. This was a stolen election, and to take everybody's mind and eyes away from it, they diverted your attention to the January 6th Commission, which was a report on the breach of the Capitol. And that was a fairy tale in the way that it was presented. Look, was it something that we're proud of? Absolutely not. Was there violence there? Yes, there was. Were the majority of people there to do violent acts? Absolutely not. A very small handful of people did the violent acts. Some people think they were provocateurs and that they were not actually there out of their conscience, but rather some sort of political operation to create havoc. We know that Donald Trump offered 10,000 National Guard officer or units to come into the Capitol to maintain the peace, and we know that Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic liberal mayor of Washington turned them down. So that's my theory, that's my belief, and it's not just something that I've casually developed. It's after the result of 4 years of reading and working and looking at the evidence. And that is the conclusion that I have come to. What we want to do is prevent that from happening in 2024. So, Brad, give us the meat on the bone. What did the legislature do? What did they enact that adds to Senate Bill 202 and is going to make our elections more secure this November?
Yeah, and let me just add that your comments comparing this to JFK's assassination. One other difference, which makes it even worse with the January 6th Commission, was it was not bipartisan. It was completely partisan with two Republicans that were put on there who hated President Trump, and it was not done in a bipartisan fashion. And we're learning more and more every day about evidence being suppressed and things that were never shown that they were fully cognizant and aware of, but they had a narrative and they wanted to stick with it.
Well,
So
and they cherry
let's
picked
turn to what
they cherry picked
sorry.
the videos. They cherry picked about, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours of video out of hundreds of hours of video, and the video did not tell an accurate story of what happened there that day. And I won't get off on a tangent. The only thing is that I think of Ashley Babbitt. I think of her every day and what a horrible wrong that was. And there is no accountability. And it's swept under the rug. And how Democrats could have such a low value for human life and be willing to having taken a human life and sweep it under the rug and not hold somebody accountable and tell the truth around it. But anyway, we digress. So we got new election legislation. What changes can we look forward to?
Yeah, so let me say this. We also including the eliminating no excuse absentee ballots and the drop boxes and going to opt-in motor voter that I've already previously talked about. Those were 3 of our priorities of our task force. The rest of our priorities are contained in what has been passed this legislative session. So I'm very proud of that, and I mentioned that we're going to continue to fight for those other 3. The first thing I'll tell everybody is I think that we have improved our audits that are going to happen going forward. They're going to be they're going to be more extensive. They're going to look at different races. They're going to always look at the closest races. Certainly, any race that goes to a runoff. That is the minimum standard, meaning even Fulton County has to do it. But then counties can go beyond that and do more extensive audits if they so choose. But the state is establishing a baseline. I think having audits is extremely important for our overall confidence of our voters. And let me just add, before we get into all of the details here, our task force is called the Election Confidence Task Force. Our goal was to give voters more confidence in their elections. And that means all voters. We saw after the 2018 election that Democrats didn't have confidence in the election. And then after the 2020 election, it was certainly Republicans. But we want all voters to have confidence in our election system because we truly believe and want every legal voter to be able to vote in Georgia. We just want to stop the illegal votes in Georgia and the vote harvesting and the things that are going to dilute the votes of every legal voter in the state. And by the way, if we lose an election fair and square on the policies and the issues and our positions are not what the majority of our voters want, well, that's what happens in an election. And then I hope we do a better job when we run the next election. I just don't want to lose elections when there are not accurate results, okay? And so that, to me, is what we should all be concerned with. And it really does matter when you have close races like we had with 11,779 votes with Joe Biden over Donald Trump in 2020. That is an extremely close total out of 5 million votes cast. But there are House districts that have been decided by 300 votes. And even smaller amounts. So when you have election fraud, it can actually mean that the person that should have won didn't win. So we want to minimize that to the greatest extent possible. But also, if our Republican voters have confidence in the election, and I hope they do, they will come out and vote, and we will have enough ballots that even they can't cheat enough to stop. So that's our first goal is to make sure we blow the doors off. And I heard of one of your callers before this. We have got to all come out and we've got to all support President Trump and all of our Republican candidates. That's first and foremost. If someone chooses not to vote because they don't have confidence in the election, then we're losing that vote. So I want everyone to have confidence and go out and vote, and I think we'll win in the end. So,
well, I have heard President Trump say on numerous occasions that we've got to overwhelm them with votes so that it's so overwhelming that they can't cheat. I can't put my whole faith and confidence in our election just on that. And so I am so pleased to hear that the Georgia legislature has continued to work on election integrity. I think that's a giant step in the right direction. So the audit that you mentioned, what triggers the audit? Who does the audit? Are there independent observers allowed and present for these audits?
So this is expanding the risk limiting audits. It makes them more expansive and standardizing how that would work. And it really creates some independence because it's going to be done through just the results of the election and focusing on the closest results. You can't just decide to audit one election versus another based on some random criteria. It will have to be because these were the closest elections. So I think, and because it doesn't limit a county from doing more than that, I think it's a very good thing. We will see some of our counties go beyond that, and I think that's a very good thing. We've seen that after these municipal elections last year, where folks were wanting to verify with a hand count the elections and compare it to what the results of the Dominion voting machines are. And so let me move into the next thing that we accomplished this legislative session.
Let me ask you before you move on. Does the Secretary of State, does he conduct the risk limiting audits?
That is done by the counties.
By the counties.
Yes.
And was there any initiative that was given serious consideration that would make ballots subject to Open Records Acts, particularly absentee ballots?
Yes, and we accomplished that as well. So that basically you are obviously very familiar with the litigation that's happened in Fulton County and us trying to get access to the absentee ballots in Fulton County. As you know, we were given 300 DPI images of the absentee ballots from Fulton County. That's going to continue. That is mandated. That those will be posted by the Secretary of State, so everyone in the state would have access to those ballot images. But to your point, this legislation is also going to enable people to request the ballots, and they can get they can actually get not the actual ballots, but a higher resolution of the ballots beyond 300 DPI, as long as the person is willing to pay those costs. And so that's also contained in the legislation.
Now, what about the QR codes? That is a very worrisome component of a ballot. And folks, when you go into the poll and you score your ballot, a QR code, supposedly, it's what I understand, is created and stamped onto that ballot, which is really where the tabulation or where your ballot is scored. It's not the line items that you and I see when we score our ballot. It's really translated into a QR code that the computer can then read. That is potentially very concerning to me, that a QR code, nobody can read it except the people that create it and the computer that reads it. Who's to say that it reflects the ballot that was scored?
That's right, and we have had a lot of discussions, and all of these recommendations and the things that the legislature has passed. I will say that our election confidence task force voted unanimously to support. And when I was lobbying these legislators, it was very important for me to say that I was speaking with one voice from the Republican Party, that the entire Republican Party, from the most moderate person to the most conservative, MAGA, not MAGA, America First, not America First, establishment, whatever you want to say, every faction of the party weighed in on this, and we all agreed. The entire task force agreed with these recommendations. And one of our recommendations was to eliminate the use of the QR code. The legislature has indeed listened to that, and we are working to that. So what is going to happen in this 2024 election is there has been $5 million allocated. This will be a pilot project. There will be, again, audits of, or in these certain places, they're going to have to be less than 5,000 voters in an election. But that can be, it could be a whole county, It could be a portion of another county. But the point is that with the new legislation, instead of scanning the QR code, they're going to scan the text. Now, what does that mean? It means it answers exactly what you're talking about, because the QR code, no one can read it.
Brad, I'm going to interrupt you for
Like
just
a
1 second. We've got to
QR.
take a mandatory pause here to identify our stations. We'll be right back with Brad Carver. Don't move a muscle. We'll be right back. All right, this is The Truth. We're telling you the truth. I'm John Gordon. We're on the John Fredericks Media Network, and today's broadcast is being brought to you by First Liberty Georgia, our sponsors, and welcome them to The Truth. Brad, we got to wrap it up. I got Linda Tyler. She's on the line, patiently waiting for us for our next segment called Growing Old Gracefully, BS. Linda's going to tell us how to keep our diet in check. But before we go to Linda, Brad, I want to wrap up with you. Tell us what you think is the most significant legislation that came out of that. What are you the most proud of? And then I want to wish you a happy Easter and thank you for taking time from your Saturday to join us.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm going to quickly go through the rest. I mean, not the rest, but just the high points of it. So we also got expanded ballot watch, poll watcher language. That's going to offer protections to our poll watchers, give them more access, and that's going to apply in all 159 counties, red counties, blue counties, Democrat poll watchers, Republican poll watchers. I think it was a very good thing, and I'm glad we passed that. The most important thing that, in my opinion, we passed, and in fact, the opinion of our entire task force, is we have improved our voter challenge process. As you know, John, we have almost 1 million people on the Georgia voter rolls right now that should not be voting. They're still on there. They're dead. They have moved out of state. They're not valid voters. There are entries, multiple entries for the same person. All of that creates the opportunity for people for fraudulent or inaccurate votes to be cast in our Georgia elections. And we have volunteers all across the state. I want to give a special shout out to Jason Frazier in Fulton County, who's done an outstanding job. But we have Mark Davis, we have Rick Richards over in Augusta. We have people in all of our big metro counties that are volunteering to go through the voter rolls and challenge invalid entries on the voter rolls. This bill that we passed, Senate Bill 189, is going to improve that process. And it was the bill that the left was targeting more than anything else. Fair Fight, Stacey Abrams' Fair Fight, actually had an electronic billboard truck, again going around the Capitol, saying that Republicans were vote suppressors because of her, of their organizations and the ACLU's opposition to our legislation. But it is, go ahead.
Brad, you've just done great work, and I thank you so much. I've got so many other questions I want to ask you, and unfortunately, we're out of time. Has Fonnie Willis rang your phone?
Has you rang my phone?
Yeah. Did you have to go testify?
Yeah, I'm one of the unindicted co-conspirators. Yes. So yeah, I have been through hell and back over the last 3 years because I'm a Republican election lawyer and fighting for the truth in the 2020 election, and we know that can't happen. So it has been a rough ride. I'm standing tall and strong, and I want to give a special shout to all of our unindicted or other unindicted co-conspirators and our ones that are still in the line of fire. Senator Sean Still, obviously Chairman David Schaefer. We want to look after all of those.
Bob Shealy, Jay Smith, President Donald Trump, Jeff Clark, who's a friend of mine, Rudy Giuliani, who they have destroyed. They've taken his house in New York. They're trying to take his house in Palm Beach. They've stripped him of his law license. I've never seen a worse display of abuse of authority, abuse of power, just
election interference
and election interference in pursuit of greed for power and lust for money. And it is just a shame. Brad Carver, have a wonderful Easter. Thank you for coming on The Truth. You're welcome back anytime, and I look forward to seeing you in person soon. I do hope. Next, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move into our next segment, and it is called Growing Old Gracefully, BS. I'm 71 years old. I'm fighting it as hard and as fast as I can. And I played an hour of tennis before I came on the air today. I played 2 hours yesterday. I try and maintain a good diet, even though I know I fail. Truth be known, Linda Tyler, I probably drink a little too much. I don't think I crossed the line, but yeah, very seldom do I go a night without a dirty martini. You are a diet and health expert. Tell us, how should we be eating?
Hi, John. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you for coming on.
My focus is on inflammation, which is related to aging. This is my cookbook that came out last month, the plant-based anti-inflammatory cookbook. And inflammation, unfortunately, is related to aging. Inflammation can age us from the inside, and aging, unfortunately, can cause inflammation. So it can be a vicious cycle, but there are things we can do, especially with our diet, but also exercise. So your tennis is great. But what I tried to do here was explain inflammation to people, for one thing, because I don't think it's well understood, and then share what the most anti-inflammatory foods are, according to research scientists. And then I share 80 recipes with full-page photos of each recipe that feature those anti-inflammatory superstars, so that people can start to think about increasing the kinds of foods that lower inflammation in their diet.
Well, we're talking to Linda Tyler. She is a dietitian, I guess is the right word to say, that she believes in a plant-based diet. I think we call that vegan, don't we?
Yeah, sometimes people differentiate and call a plant-based diet the more healthy whole foods version of not eating animal products, whereas a vegan is a broader term for not eating animal products. But some people would say you can be a junk food vegan, and people who call themselves plant-based usually are a little more focused on the health aspects of the diet.
So I'm not very well up to speed on these things. I don't understand the distinction between a vegan and a vegetarian. I understand there is a difference. Can you help us?
Yeah,
understand?
there's a difference. Vegetarians usually eat eggs and dairy. So that would include cheese and milk and cream and butter and eggs. And then vegans don't eat any animal products. So they don't eat milk or cheese or eggs. That's the difference between vegetarian and vegan.
You're kind of reminding me of the guy who said his wife made him quit smoking and drinking and looking at other ladies when he was middle-aged because she wanted him to live longer. And he said, that's not true. It just makes it seem a lot longer. So you're going to take away my filet mignon, my T-bone steak, my yogurt, my milk in my coffee every morning. But the benefit is you believe it will reduce inflammation and that I will then be able to live longer.
Yeah, and there are lots of delicious ways to eat plant-based. So it is not a life of sacrifice and suffering, I guarantee you. And I hope that the recipes, if somebody were to try those, would see, yeah, this is delicious. And that's certainly the feedback I've gotten. So, delicious soups, delicious desserts and cakes and cookies, delicious salads and entrees with like a ricotta cheese made from cashew nuts, and smoothies and all sorts of things that taste wonderful and are much less inflammatory in your body, because dairy and meat can, especially things like cheese and butter and beef and other animal products, contain a lot of saturated fat, which is inflammatory to the body. And saturated fat can increase your leaky gut, which allows things into your blood system that also turns on inflammation. Certainly if those kinds of foods lead to excess weight, that's not good either, especially as we age, because it all sort of comes to the middle of our body, which is the worst kind of body fat to have, which is actually pro-inflammatory and can increase tissue damage and increase frailty and weakness. So we don't want that. So one of the reasons to give up and find delicious substitute for those foods is to avoid saturated fats and acid in our body.
So you're talking about belly fat when you say it moves to the center of your body, and that is something that I have fought my entire adult life. It just will not go away. I can lose 20 pounds, but I still have that belly fat.
Yeah, I have been experiencing that too. I'm in my 60s, and you
Oh,
know,
you're a child.
some skirts that I used to have to put a safety pin in the back because my waist was small. You know, now I don't need the safety pin, even though, as you say, my weight is the same too. So, you know, the best we can do is exercise and eat well and try to, you know, keep our weight, you know, to a healthy low level, because it seems like we're just going to have some of that, and the more we can minimize body fat in general. But yeah, that is for whatever reason, that is what happens as we get older, is it moves to the equator.
Well, I had an experience about, I guess it's been 4 or 5 years ago. I've been really blessed with good health, knock on wood. I hope I'm not jinxing myself. But I had really painful knees, and I went for 4 years trying to rehabilitate my knees. And even though I went to the orthopedic, he showed me the x-rays, I'm bone on bone. There's just nothing you can do about knees that are bone on bone. But the one thing I found that I could do was take absurd amounts of Advil, and it would dull the pain. It wouldn't cure the problem, but it would dull the problem, so I could continue to play tennis. And I then developed a low-grade temperature and some abdominal pain, and it was persistent. It wouldn't go away. So I finally went to my concierge doctor, which is otherwise known as Med-Now, I think. It's, you know, I go to a doc in the box. Yeah. I don't have a concierge doctor, as most of my friends do. And this guy, he was an Indian doctor. He said, "Oh, I'm worried about you. You must go to the emergency room immediately." And I said, "Doc, just give me a shot in the butt and send me home. I'm fine." He said, "No, I'm worried about you. You have to go to the emergency room." So I went to Piedmont Hospital in Atlanta, where I lived at the time. Still do have my home there, but I spend most of my time in South Florida today. But I went to the emergency room. Within 15 or 20 minutes, they diagnosed me with diverticulitis. So I immediately went to the penultimate source of knowledge, to the internet, and I read about diverticulitis, and the first line of the response was indulging ibuprofen. And I, you know, you're supposed to take 2. I was taking 4, 5, and 6, and I developed diverticulitis. And so I spent 2 or 3 days in the hospital. I was determined never to do that again. So I quit taking ibuprofen, and I went and had my knees replaced, and now I'm doing pretty good. But that's a long way of saying I think I got a bad gut. I just go through these cycles where I'm you know, the lower intestinal issues continue to recur. So I think I am going to have to go to the doctor, but you think maybe a plant-based diet will be my salvation?
Well, you know, I can't promise that, given, you know, the ibuprofen episode, because I know I've had doctors.
I've taken it in 4 years, though.
4 years that way? Oh my
No, I have not taken it for 3 or 4 years.
Oh, good.
That
but I
was
know.
historical.
Yeah. I know. I was warned off of ibuprofen when I told my primary care physician once that I was taking it because of an injury. And he just said, you know, if you want rectal bleeding, fine. I said, okay, I'll stop.
Good decision.
So yeah, I think it's worth increasing your prebiotics, especially fiber. And fiber is anti-inflammatory because it helps the gut. So things like beans and whole grains are super good for you, as well as green leafy vegetables like kale and chard, and, you know, those spring greens that come in those plastic containers that you can make salads out of, you know, however you can get greens and brown rice and oats and beans. You know, I have so many bean recipes on my website. graciousvegan.com. You can make a pinto bean soup, a black bean soup, chickpea soups, all sorts of wonderful fruits. Eat hummus. I think if you can get up to, upwards toward 30 grams of fiber a day, that's going to, in the course of a couple of months, really build up your good gut bacteria, and that might help to repair and strengthen that lining that may be leaky. I can't promise that, given I don't know what the damage is, but I think eating fiber just has so many benefits for all sorts of things, in terms of your immunity, in terms of your digestion, in terms of in terms of inflammation. So, increasing your fiber is probably one of the best, the absolute best pieces of advice I could ever give.
So you said pinto beans, and did you say black beans? I love black beans.
Yeah, black beans, any kind of legume or lentil, if you like lentil soup or split pea soup. But yeah, black beans, kidney beans, red beans, pinto beans, white beans, navy beans, all those are great for you.
So my wife used to love to cook, and she is a great cook, but I think she's lost the map to the kitchen. She just doesn't cook anymore. So we eat out just about every meal. And it's kind of hard to find the things that you're talking about when you eat out. Is there a place you can go and have a nice meal and eat as you're prescribing here?
It is very difficult. I will have to say, so many restaurants, number one, they don't offer a lot of vegan or plant-based foods besides, little side dishes. And number two, they use a lot of butter and salt and oil because they think that's what makes things taste so good, let alone the sugar and fat in the desserts. So yeah, it is really important to start to be on the lookout. You could check out some of those food services like Purple Apron. They deliver a box and you finish the recipe yourself, but they have all the ingredients in the measured amounts, and they give you the instructions. So there are box food services that you could, that practically make the meal for you. You put it together and finish it. That's one option. Just maybe working together, finding some simple recipes. I don't know if you have an Instant Pot, but that makes making bean soup super easy. You could, if you weren't too hungry at a restaurant, order some hummus. Sometimes they have hummus appetizers and have some bread and vegetables, or just, start to find some restaurants that have healthier food. There are many more vegan-friendly restaurants. That's what I put into Google Maps when I'm in a city that's not familiar to me. I put in vegan-friendly, so they may not be completely vegan, but usually to get that distinction, they have at least one or two plant-based meals. And so, I used to live in New Jersey, and, going to a diner in New Jersey is really tough to get vegan food. So you have to get creative, talking to the wait staff and say, could we do this and this and this? That would be great. Pasta can be a great vegan food as well, just leaving off a meat sauce and leaving off the heavy cream sauces, but you can, work with marinara sauces and, a salad with the dressing on the side. So you use minimal salad dressing if it contains a lot of oil. Those are some of the strategies that I use.
Those are great practical suggestions. We're talking to Linda Tyler. She's the author of The Plant-Based Anti-Inflammatory Diet. And you grew up in California. Now I understand you live in Portland, Oregon. That's a pretty healthy lifestyle, is it not?
Well, it's interesting that, yes, Portland
Bike trails,
is
walking
considered
paths, mountains is what I think about.
Yeah, there's just beautiful mountains very near here. Always a place you can hike or ski, or an hour to the coast. So yeah, there's a lot of people who love the outdoor lifestyle here. I have found that for sure.
And you're actually teaching this at the Portland Community College. So who are your students?
So They are mostly community members, so it's usually not people who are going for their associate's degree who are in the academic programs. This is more through the community education school, so it's open to everybody in the community, and they even send out a catalog, I think, to everyone who lives in the Portland metro area. So everybody gets a catalog in the mail. And so I'm teaching, I start next week teaching a series of classes on plant-based eating and the aging process. So we do a little bit of a deep dive into different aspects of aging, like muscle tone, like our minds, our hair and skin, and just the basic processes at the molecular level that age us, and what we can do in terms of eating and exercise that can slow down the aging process, at least. Obviously, we can't stop it completely. So yeah, and I've done other classes on soups and grains and baking and just all sorts of different classes. And I started teaching right after the pandemic shut down classrooms on Zoom. So I send out the recipe handout a week early, and if people want to cook along with me, they can. Most people don't, especially if they're joining from across the country. It's way too late to cook, but they can, people can cook along from their kitchen. And I usually give, some informational slides first, and then I demonstrate 3 or 4 recipes with an overhead camera and other cameras so people get a good look at how things can be made. And I make like 4 recipes in an hour, hour and a half, so they're doable. I hope people like your wife might get back into the passion of cooking, because it can be fun, if you have a goal, like I'm going to try to eat more fiber and cook with more fiber, or I'm going to try to cook some anti-inflammatory dishes, and get that passion back, because there's nothing like the passion of cooking when you love it. I often, listen to podcasts or stream some TV shows while I'm chopping vegetables, if that's what I have to do that day. There's lots of fun things you can do even if you're alone in the kitchen. But yeah, it's really a lot of fun to teach over Zoom. Before that, I had to, pack up lots of food and a bunch of boxes, schlep it in my car to the site, get everything out, set everything up, clean up, get back in my car, so it's a lot of fun just doing it from my kitchen. I enjoy it a lot. Now the students, they would like some samples. They want to taste things. So that's the big downside of Zoom.
Well, I like meat, but I don't crave it. I really like pork, and I do crave that. I love barbecue. I grew up in the South, so what do you expect? So that's a compromise. Is there a middle ground? I mean, can I eat
There's
like a
totally a
plant-based
middle
diet and
ground.
just reward myself or spoil myself periodically?
There's totally a middle ground. It's not an all or nothing. It's as much as you can make these changes, you're going to benefit. You may not get the full benefit, but you're definitely going to get a benefit. So, there's some people who follow a vegan before 6 approach, and so they eat vegan until dinner time. There's other people who do it by day or by meal, or, you can do it in all sorts of ways. Again, I think if you emphasize the fiber, and just eating a lot of different fresh fruits and vegetables and different foods you like. If you're tending to eat meat 2-3 times a day, can you get that down to 1? That's a good goal at first, and see how you feel. I think usually if people make a decent change, not just like, well, I'm going to switch to oatmeal at breakfast, but more dramatic than that. But maybe not all the way 100% plant-based. You're going to start seeing some differences, and I hope you'll feel a little more energy. Your digestion will improve, because no animal product contains fiber. There's no fiber in animal products. So you have to eat plants to get fiber.
So what about oatmeal? Does that fall into the category that you're describing? Because I do eat oatmeal for breakfast pretty religiously.
That's good. Keep it up. And, if you can, add some seeds on top, some blueberries, berries, any kind of dark fruit or vegetable. is really good for you. So adding, having berries every day is a super good habit. And you can just put those in your oatmeal or on top of your oatmeal if you have fresh berries. That's really good. So maybe with your oatmeal, kind of build up some of the superfoods from there. And then that's a great start to your day. And then mid-morning, have an apple, or even if you need a little more than an apple, include the apple, because apples are also anti-inflammatory.
Now, I was just told this week by somebody who professes to know that bananas is a really good fruit to eat, that it is really good for your gut, and particularly before they get really ripe.
Oh, okay. That's a new one on me. I am going to have to research that one. They don't have, there's not a relationship to inflammation, but that's not what you said. You said something else. So I'll have to check that. I hadn't heard that. And I definitely hadn't heard the part about before they're ripe. I make smoothies with frozen bananas, and I wait till they're ripe because they're so sweet. And then I cut them up and freeze them. And then I use them another day for a smoothie. But I will check that out.
And then finally, I want to ask you, I've been kind of, I not now, but when I was younger, I was sort of a gym rat. I would go to the gym every night after work and lift weights and do cardio. And I was told then that I needed to eat a lot of protein in order to build muscle mass. And you're taking the protein away. Yet I heard you say that this could contribute to overall muscle tone. Tell us what you mean, and how am I going to get that youthful look back?
Yeah, so great question, because I think most of us think that if you work out, you have to eat a lot more protein than the basic recommendation. But that is not true according to a newer generation of research. There are various studies now that say you don't need a lot of extra protein. And in fact, studies of aging show that additional protein is not good for you, and actually restricting your protein to the basic amount recommended by, that we all know, the formula that we all know, like it results in about like 45 grams of protein a day for women and 55 grams of protein a day for men. Actually is very healthy in terms of aging, and in terms of, there's a best-selling book called The Plant-Based Athlete that cites all the research that shows you don't need a ton more protein in order to build muscles. So if you're an athlete, you don't need that. And beans are such a great source of protein, and they are non-acid. Meat tends to be acidic, which can have other issues for our body. So, if you're eating 3 servings of beans a day, or having peanuts or hummus or veggie burgers, there are all sorts of legume-based sources of 3 servings a day. That's a great way to get protein. Plus, with beans, you get the fiber. And with meat, you don't get the fiber. So yeah, that's a great question, because I think the science is changing around protein requirements, especially if we're getting older. More protein can actually feed some of the growth factors that can age us.
Thank you, Linda Tyler. That is some really good information and some real practical solutions to how we can get to a better diet, reducing our inflammation and a better gut, all those good healthy aspirational things that we need to be thinking about. And we're going to keep pushing back against this aging business. And you've given us a lot of good suggestions. So hold that book up again for us, if you would.
Yes.
Linda Tyler, author of the Plant-Based Anti-Inflammatory Cookbook. I think I might just order that today. Would you get it from Amazon?
You could get it from Amazon. It's also at Costco. Costco adopted it, so it's there too.
And I bet we can also get it off of your website. Give us that one more time.
It's called graciousvegan.com.
I hope you and your family have a wonderful Easter holiday weekend. Thank you so much for coming on The Truth with John Gordon. We're going to have to leave it there for now, but I look forward to having you back on at a future time, and we'll continue this journey that we're on how to build a healthier lifestyle so we can live longer, really make our children angry at us for living a long time. So with that,
Yes.
Thank you for joining us on another segment of The Truth with John Gordon and Growing Old Gracefully BS. I hope you all have a wonderful holiday weekend with family and friends. And we'll see you back here next Saturday on the John Fredericks Media Network. Have a great weekend, everybody.